ॐ तत्गणेशाय विद्महे वक्रतुण्डाय धीमहि तन्नो दन्तः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ तत्परं पर्याय विद्महे ज्ञानलिङ्गेश्वराय धीमहि तन्नो गुरुः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरि ओम्. Okay, so yeah, continuing into our Sanatan Dharma system. So I just want to quickly rephrase, so in the last lesson, our chapter 3, we discussed on the Chatur Purusartha, which are the four dynamic aspects of the life we wish to live, or attune our life with our wholesome potential. So we have the Dharma, the living virtuously or fulfilling our full potential. We have the Artha, the financial, the material, the prosperity. Then we have the Kama, the sensual pleasure, joy in life. And then we have the Moksha, which is working on our liberation. Now, continuing from there, in this chapter, we look at the Chatur Ashram, which to me, I feel it's almost like we have the same principle of the Chaturpursarthas, or the four pillars of life. And now we want to learn how do we fulfill them. And in a classical Sanatan or Vedic time, of course, we divide life in four phases. So, we got our learning phase, then we have the household phase, then we have the phase of, I think in the typical language, I call them the typical parenting, where you support and help life for your children and the younger generation, and you share your experience. You can also call it a teaching phase, sharing experiences with the generations to come. And then we have the complete aspect of the Sanyasa, where we renounce and move or work on our liberation itself. So in this chapter, I think to me, the two aspects I want all of us to think is, the one is looking at our life in a step-by-step evolutionary process. But I also see those four ashrams really need to be lived in our life every day. And some things we may not agree with anymore, because especially the age groups, and I taken that out from the first slide. So let me bring the screen to bring it up. So we are on the same chapter. So we're looking at the fourth chapter as we work through the ashram, this Sanatan wisdom, or the Sanatan way to live, which is find a way to intune or attune with your wholesome potential, and then attain your liberation or your freedom through that. So the four terms really amazing to know or to remember, to learn as part of also the basics of the Sanskrit terms in our teachings we want to develop. So the first phase of life is Brahmacharya. Now I know the Brahmacharya also translates as celibacy and all that, but here the Brahmacharya is the phase of life where you learn about the routine, the nature, or the law of life itself. You learn how to live, you learn or develop all the skills, and you work on your evolution. The second phase we have is the Grahatha, the household phase, where you make a family and you support your society, economy. And Grahatha also includes the pleasure, as you got your, you have your partner, and then, the reproducing the life cycle to keep the life cycle going through. In old time, it was a big part. I think in where we are with the time and phase, I would say if some of us don't create kids, it's also fine because there is too many already on the planet Earth. But I'm not saying that you should or you should not, but what I'm saying is, it doesn't have to be any age at this point or this cycle of our life. But don't take me in a diplomatic correct or incorrect phase, okay? It's fine. If you wish to have, that's great. If you don't wish to have, that's also great. And I will support you both ways as part of my yoga family. And then we have well, I'm really saying to few people, young people here, really, the Rob and Catherine, and if they wish to. Okay, so moving forward on to the third phase of the life is the Vanaprastha. So the Van is the forest dwelling. But here, really, it doesn't mean that you've gone out in the forest, but it means now you have stepped out from your household life and you live a simple life. And in that life, I think in our modern terms, we call it the retired life, or the life where we educate and support, just like the grandparents. So a role that is like a grandparents or a teacher or a guru, where you share your experiences, share what you have understood that helps life to become better. And then the fourth phase of the life is the sannyasa, where we renounce all of this. We renounce even the dharma itself and focus our life on self-realization or enlightenment or liberation. So these are four really beautiful aspects of the life we see now. We have the Brahmacharya, Grahatha, Vanaprastha, and Sanyasa. Now, as in the very beginning, I want to say it again just so we are aware. Two ways you can look at these four ashrams. The one is following it with the evolution of the age. Okay, so we got as I said, we got from typically in the Vedic time, it goes from the 0 to 25 or the 27, depending on 100 or 108. And then from 27 to 54, and then from 54 to, 81 or 84. And then it goes from there to 108. If you want to divide it in 100, then 25, 25, 25 each. So those are the cycles. But the way I see it, and this is how I also practice it in my day-to-day life, is can I create a wholesome aspect of my life and make space for each of these ideas in my life? And I probably, I have my reason. My reason is, you see, especially where we are in our life, this aging system is not really working anymore, is it? Now, I don't know. I guess like if I go back in the ancient time, in the Sanatan Indian calendar, like how far they practiced Brahmacharya, did they actually stay away from the opposite sex for 27 years or not? But in the time and space where we are, it's difficult to keep our kids away when they are like 14, 15, 16, or you all know what I mean. Like probably, I think Deepa, you will have to see it in a couple of years, as the children grow. And then same for me too, seeing my own boys getting to that point, that phase of life. So in that way, the age system may not be as applicable as we may think. So the way I see the Chatur Ashram system is I align it with the Chatur Purusharthas, and then can I live all the four aspects of my life? And I will tell you why. Well, think of if the Grahastha is to fulfill our household needs, well, at least in the Western system, probably in India, it can be different. Of course, if you renounce and become a monk, I'm sure you will be given food and everything. And I lived my life a couple of years like that. So I don't have to work economically to earn my living. But in the time and space we live, it doesn't matter what age we are, isn't it? We got to still make our living and we got to bring joy to our life. But along with that, can we make some space for our brahmacharya, which we are all doing? Like to me, typical example of brahmacharya now we are spending an hour every day. We spend half an hour in the morning. And I believe you also all do some other practices to support your health, your wellness, and your spiritual evolution. So then that can be seen as your Brahmacharya in your daily life. Then I also believe, wow, you all are paying for the course. Okay, so that's one way for me to feel that you all are working and earning your living, and you know what I mean. So there is a living, and I hope you all finding a way to enjoy your life. You're bringing pleasure and celebration to it. So that becomes the Grastha. And then some of you, I know for sure, you are running classes. Some of you, also, support your families around by sharing your experience and your wisdom, your care, and all of that. So that becomes our Vanaprastha. And then, giving a little bit more time to our sannyasa, which like, if we are following the mantras and pranayams during the 9 days every day. So that will be a little bit of renouncing from the material and connecting to the higher power of the Shakti or the goddess. So, here, we can think of the two ways to look at it. We look at it in the 4 parts of the life, or for me, we really need to live the 4 ashrams every day. So, to me, the life becomes out of balance or out of harmony when we become too much obsessed in one and we're not giving enough to the other parts of our life. So giving a fair amount of time, energy, and balancing or the integrating the 4 parts of your fulfillment, accomplishment of the life. And in that way, you will become a wholesome person. So you're not giving too much to one or other, and then you're lacking in the other aspects. So now let's dive deep into the lesson. So now, in this way, what we are looking here, as I was explaining, is this integral way or systematic way to navigate our full or our wholesome spectrum of life. Remember, to me, if you say that I'm living my life or my Sanatan Dharma, then you moving from the control, suppression, escape, or that kind of painful place into fulfillment, joy, and celebration. And for celebration of the life, for the joy of life, we need to live that dynamic perspective. And that's what we are looking or we are learning into the Chatur Ashrams. So the Chatur is the 4, and then the ashrams described as the life or a dwelling, a place to be. Now, in that way, wherever you live, can you create that systematic ashram in your life? And I don't mean the ashram like, coming to the ashram, like some of you coming to India, some of you come to Portugal. I mean, where you create a dwelling, a space that accommodates fulfillment to all aspects of your life. Creating a space for your fun, space for your entertainment, your family, education, your sadhana, your practice, and integrating or aligning that again with the Chatur Purusharthas, the Dharma, the Artha, Kama, and Moksha. So by putting two together, I believe that you will see there is a systematic or a very scientific or an organized way to live our life. And now and then I think of, when we organize our life in such a beautiful way, I feel personally, this is my personal thing, you all may have a very different understanding or experience of it. But the way I feel, say if the Lord of the Death comes, which we believe in the Indian system, of course, in the Western system, you may have a different ways to look at it. The spirit or the angels will come and take your spirit. I always think if that spirit comes to take my soul out of my body, would I be happy to say, wow, I've done all the parts I could have done? And to me, the Chatur Ashram and the Purusartha, 4 Purusartha system is that contentment. Of course, it's never enough, is it? I'm sure we all have like, oh, let me just build one more thing. Let my children to grow. Let my grandchildren to get married. This is sort of like, my mom and dad, they're like, oh, we would like to see the grandparents getting married and all that. So I know there is no contentment, but to me, when you integrate the 4 Purusarthas and the 4 Ashrams, then it really doesn't matter the length, the depth of the life. It will matter the quality of the life. So to me, these 2 principles are changing or bringing the quality to our life, quality to our spirit, quality to that being wholesome. So let's look into, I guess, each one of them. So looking at the very first phase, which typically known to be from 0 to 27 years from the ancient or the Vedic time, which we'll be looking into the second module. So probably we got at least another 10, 12 lesson in this module before we move into looking at some of the more of the wisdom that gives us the idea of the life and consciousness, time and creation and all of that. So the Brahmacharya, I translate it as a student life instead of calling it a life of celibate, because I know I have read few books where they say this is the life of the celibate. Well, I think, like, to me, the way, if I'm looking at it as an integral way to live them, then the age and that kind of description is not really the way to look at it. So the second way you can look at the word Brahmacharya, Brahma Acharya. So the Brahma is the creative principle, and then the Acharya is the one who follows. So the Brahmacharya can be understood as a phase of our life where we learn to live aligned with that nature or our wholesome potential. And of course, in that learning phase, then the celibacy need to be there, because celibacy means our sensual energies are not dispersed or not distracted. So that can be another reason to look at it. Now in this phase, we learn all the skills. We should be educated in our one potential. In ancient time, in the ashram systems, a guru, a teacher will evaluate and choose appropriate skills. So he may choose to teach us politics, maybe the archery or whatever skills, or farming that we need to learn. And what they would do, they will, if once they realize that Sujan need to be a guru, then they will send Sujan to one of the ashrams where she will be taught all the wisdom. And then you find out, Rob need to be a farmer, then he will be sent to somewhere where he developed appropriate skills. And this is where the Varna system was developed, or that came to existence. Now, eventually, of course, then people made it with the birth, but that wasn't the original system. The Varna system, the class system, was up as per the skills of each individual. So a carpenter, a farmer, a warrior, this is kind of how we see. So, we will be sent to the appropriate ashram or the Gurukula, a place of education to develop those skills. And in that, we have the scriptural studies, sciences, arts, ethics, warfare, life skills. You name it. And when you pick the Vedic teachings or the scriptures, that's what the Vedas teach. Okay, the Vedic teachings will go as far as how to make a wheel, or how to grow the, like what we in the modern time, we call it the permaculture system. It describes all these system. It talks about the seasons and the seasonal food and growth and stuff. So, it has that all inclusiveness. So it says that in this phase, our life should be dedicated to cultivate the virtue, to learn self-discipline and all other virtues, to develop or to master those skills. So you can think of this phase is actually to prepare us for the next 3 ashrams. And this is why I feel that in our dynamic time where we live in, we need to prepare ourselves every day. Because what skills you may have learned yesterday may not be good enough anymore, or we are growing, we are evolving. Sometimes we are stronger, other times weaker. So there is something we need to learn every day, and we need to keep evolving or keep upgrading into that. Then we have the second ashram, the second part of the life. Now the grahastha in this principle is understood to be the accommodating space. So please do remember, the grahastha is going to provide economic and the protective space for the brahmachari. So in the first phase, and then same for the second and third phase. So a grahastha will provide food, shelter, and all other needs need to be fulfilled for the other 3 aspects of life, if that makes sense. So once we complete our education, once we feel mature physically, mentally, and emotionally, then we will be sent into the second phase, that is the grahastha, the life of a household. In the typical very ancient time, then I know so many stories where, once your guru, your teacher in the Gurukula feel you are qualified, you learn all that you need to learn, then the guru will find an appropriate match, and then they will invite both the parents, for the boy and girl. And in many events, the student or the disciple will get married and then go back to their normal life to raise, to make a family and raise children, and also make the livelihood and contribute to the community. So it does become very important. And in the grahastha, need to sustain the 4 aspects regularly. Artha, which is the material prosperity or the material support; the kama, the pleasure or the desire, fulfillment of the pleasure of the life; and also the dharma, the moral and the spiritual duty. So these do become quite important. And the moksha has been taken out here. I believe the reason is if we put more into the moksha, then the vairagya can develop. And then once the vairagya develops, or once your energy will be withdrawn inward, then you would not really have interest in the household life. Like the Buddha, he left his children, he left his family. So there are so many stories when the sannyasa or the moksha aspect of the energy or the vairagya develops, then we would not feel the desire towards the all other aspects. So then these 3 are the very important part of our living or our evolution in this process. But again, living virtuously and fulfilling our responsibilities with compassion is very important. Also serving our family, our society with love and integrity. So, think of the skills we learn. This is the testing time. It's living those skills. And if we live those skills enough, then we will be prepared for the third phase. If you think about it, which then, because you are living these practices, you are living your skills, now you are developing or gaining the experience, which prepares us to the third phase of life, which is the Vanaprastha, the retired or the forest dwelling life. Now, it's quite amazing. I think when I look back, when I was growing up in the typical Indian society or the Indian culture, sort of, like my grandmother or my granddad, they were sort of living in the same family. And as they come to this phase, they will make a small hut or they will make a little home just by the corner of the house. So they can just go and be there peacefully and always there to provide support for the young children and tell us stories and share the experiences. So we can really think of this as I use the word typical grandparenting, and where we share our experience. And I don't mean that we have to be grandparent. Okay, I'm using that. I don't want anyone to take that again as that's what we need to have. To me, I'm talking about the role where you help or you support the young families which are growing. Your support can be, sometime maybe doing babysitting, sometime maybe giving some education, teaching people what they can do, sharing your experience, and sort of like helping the next generation, the new generation, to grow into a greater self. Because the Grahastha, the household, yes, in the second phase, you are providing the daily needs or the daily meets, but you don't have that much time to educate children the moral and the ethical values or the virtues. And I personally, I do experience that actually in our nuclear families. It's a big problem, because when we live only the parents and the children in the one household, the parents are also trying to make living, and they're just busy and stressed. So this kind of foundation of the education or the teachings now relies fully on the school itself. So that is the phase we are talking about. So here you begin to withdraw from that material or the pleasure life, and we give more into sharing our experience, sharing our wisdom. So we can also call it the phase of the mentoring to the young generations. The good thing as a yoga teacher, you all do that quite often anyway. So that is really, I feel that we all are living this Vanaprastha every day. It's only will be difficult for me to call it Vanaprastha if our primary focus is to get the money from the classes. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that we should not get paid, because we all need money to pay our bills. Okay. And that includes me, because otherwise I cannot survive. But it's our primary goal to help people to get rid of their back pain, shoulder pain, have a more positive energy, connect with their greater self. So if your purpose is higher, then you can say teaching yoga or sharing your yogic knowledge is understood to be living your Vanaprastha every day. If your primary focus is your money, then that will go into the Grahastha, the second part. And I'm using that as an example that many times you may not even doing a different activity, but by changing the attitude or the perspective, the meaning of that practice will change. So also the spiritual study or the sadhana becomes of a great importance. Regular prayer, contemplation, or the selfless service, these are the very important part. So here, we are sort of, you can think of this as a link between the growing generation and the link towards the self-realization. So here, we play the both roles. We are with the children, with the young generation to help and share our experience, but also working on our vairagya or the detachment and advanced practices, you can call them, towards liberation. Typically, we should be, the forest solitude. And I think maybe the word can be changed for many of us now, because, if you are sort of like living around your family or your society, it doesn't always mean that you go out in the forest. But it means that you're not living that same material life. Your focus is not on making the material fulfillment. Your goal is not that. So you kind of, you renounce that material and you come out into the simpler living towards that solitude or to connect with the higher self. The reason in the Vedic time or in the Sanatan system, we choose the forest because the forest tunes or attunes us into the vibration of the universe, which I know, well, sadly, if you are living in a big city, blocks of the houses, the sound of the cars and the ambulances and stuff, I don't think our ears ever get to listen the sound of a cricket or a sound of a bird or a crow or all of that, then there is a sight of the nature. It's something like I found it really fascinating when I'm here, in the night, if I go, go on the top of the land, then there is no light pollution. So, again, it's a sensory, moving from the sensory deprivation into the sensory accomplishment to tune or attune into the higher vibration of the nature or the universe. And that brings us into the fourth phase of our life, and that phase is the sannyasa. So this is the renounced life. Typically now, in the Vedic time, it will mean now you will leave your household. You are not even on the same ground anymore. You go and live somewhere in the ashram, and that ashram will be run by a guru. That can be a male or female. That really not that important. So this becomes the final phase of complete renunciation. Now the individual has moved away from the first three pillars of our purusarthas, and it only gives all of his 100% to the moksha, to self-realization or the liberation. So renouncing the material possessions, also renouncing the social identities or the ego-based attachment, the material-based attachment. A simple life of a monk or a spiritual teacher. And it says that in the ashram, the sannyasa life, the embodiment or the inclusiveness of these four values, the four virtues, the satya, the truth, and then the vairagya, the non-attachment or the detachment, karuna, compassion towards yourself, compassion towards everything, and then that leads us into what we call the bhakti, the love for the divine or the universal love. Moving from the material into the highest stage. Now, please again remember, this is not to escape from our life, but it's an inculcation or development to experience the highest state of freedom. And when we play, it says that when we play these four aspects of the life, when we fulfill the four ashrams, it means now we are supporting the very foundation of the nature. If you think about that. So Krishna says that if you are not playing your role in the universe to exist, then we become a blockage, we become a weight. So by living the Chatur Purusarthas and then aligning them, just bear with me for a second. Sorry, everyone. Okay, that's my neighbor. I got an invitation for the coffee. Okay, yes. So coming back to, it's interesting, like I'm talking about the sannyasa renunciation and being invited for the joy, the celebration of the life. Well, usually we do meet. I think some of you who have been here, they know that this is a very typical time for me to get invitation for coffee at few of the local people. And once you come here, they will get the invitation. So you will experience that too. So here we're talking about playing our part in this dynamics of the life, this wholesome drama of life where you are accomplished, you are fulfilled. Now, that's the one aspect. Now, when we come to the sannyasa yoga, which we will come at some point, it also is possible that some of us may renounce earlier than it says. Like some people I know, they renounced when they were like only 4 or 5 year old. Some people renounced, in their adulthood. So it's not exactly that this framework need to be lived in this way, because if there is a calling in your heart or your spirit, to be enlightened, or you, if you're naturally feeling that vairagya, then age is not a boundary, okay? And this is for some of us, some of the younger ones in our group. So if you feel that calling, but please remember, if you are feeling to experience the renunciation, it's not to run or escape from our dharma, our responsibilities. And that is definitely something I probably have experienced several times with few people here in the ashram. I definitely have at least the 2 people who have come here, living like a monk or pretending to be a sadhu. And I don't think I was expecting to experience that in Portugal, at least, or in Wales. And the both people, one was actually typical English guy, and there was somebody also from the Europe came here, and with all the dreadlocks, and I don't know what do we call it, a hippie look? You know what I mean? So this creating this image of a renowned person. Wow, the both I found very annoying. Okay. Now, because I have this foundation of the 4 virtues, the karma, dharma, and all this we talk about. So they will be renouncing. So if you tell them to do, like, say, go and do some work in the garden, then their idea is, I have renounced everything. So my hands are the hands of Lord Krishna. Why would I make them work? But when they come to eat food, then they will be like, oh, my tummy is full of Krishna. Now I should have the food, feed Krishna. Wow, I got really annoyed with it. So I started to, a couple of days later, I did not put any food on their plate. I'm like, I'm sure Krishna can live without the food. So, the renouncing need to be a calling, because this vairagya stage, it can happen at any age, any phase of our life. But that vairagya should not be running away because, oh, I can't be bothered working. I can't be bothered dealing with a relationship. I can't be bothered with, paying my bills and stuff. And let's just renounce. And the hardest thing for me, this is for the UK people to get an idea. I know now they made it really hard. Well, he was living on benefits. And he was calling rest of the world like, oh, we just work like animals. And I'm like, okay, where does your money come from? And he told me that he's getting it from the government as he deserved to have it. So renouncing will be renouncing the fruit and not the actions. So yes, you can come to the sannyasa at any phase. The grastha, I think we all know that now has gone. Nobody waits for 27 years anymore, is it? At least for the relationships. And probably many people now, they don't even get to get married or have a relationship in that way. So to conclude on this part, you can think of these are the 4 aspects of your daily life. And can you make a space and accommodate to live these 4 qualities? And some days, the one quality can be stronger than other, and that's okay. To me, when I look at 27 year, it means also some days your grastha, the energy of the economy and pleasure can be stronger than your brahmacharyas. And then there will be time when the brahmacharya energy becomes stronger than any other energies. Like I guess if I talk from my experience, when we host any yoga course, either I'm here running in the course in Portugal or India, then I take the practice of brahmacharya at the highest level, not getting involved in anything other than yoga, sadhana, teaching, and, living aligned with that highest spirit of, towards our wholesome wellness, you can call it. So some days you may give more to the one element than the other. And yeah, so being integrative. So I think let's see one more slide to look at it in an integrative form. So this is what I was trying to conclude. Really, we can think of the Chatur Ashrams as a household, as a 4 phase, the 4 pillars or aspects of life. is to systematically organize our life. So instead of being chaotic all over the place, disorganized, or have no discipline, we create a holistic, a wholesome integration to have physical fulfillment, emotional, social, and the spiritual fulfillment. And I can also think of this, if I was to put it in a simple phrase, living appropriately. Remember, it's kind of like, I think probably the Amaji, she used to talk about this of anything you do, if it's done appropriately at appropriate time with appropriate means and in the appropriate situation, then it will be good for your evolution. And anything that is done either at inappropriate time or with inappropriate people or in inappropriate situation or with the inappropriate means, then that becomes devolution of our life. So are we to evolve or are we to devolve? And I think, to me, for my wholesome evolution, if I can integrate all four, then my life will become a celebration. It will become a joy. It's like I'm not missing anything. I'm living each and every aspect. And that's the Chatur Ashram principle typically means in our day-to-day life or day-to-day practice. I think let's have some questions or anything you all want to add. Please go for it. Yes, Ruby, please.
With this system, in each lifetime, would it be encompassing all four aspects again, or do you continue where you left off if it was like in order? Is there an anything around that?
Well, the Brahmacharya will be always given the first phase, because that's, it's regardless of wherever we live in this life. And then that's where we say the Sanatan system says every life is a divine blessing or divine opportunity. So we may have the karma that we going to lead us into the good or the bad, but still it gives us that opportunity again to learn and retrain ourselves into new skills. But then the other three phases, they will continue as it is. But people who are very highly evolved or devolved, then they will be born in a very ideal situation to continue a journey where they left. So let's say you have been doing your sadhana very intensely. So then you are more likely to be born in a family or in a situation or in a society where you will be provided your opportunity towards evolution or self-realization from a very first moment. So yes, any of the things can speed up. And in similarly, yes, if the karma is very suppressed, say in the previous life, then we can also be born in a situation where there will be the too much energy of the karma, too much energy of the money. So my answer will be more diplomatic. I hope you get my answer, Ruby. So we will bring that baggage and that will create the perfect or the ideal opportunity. And in that one, some ashrams will be more intensified than the others. And I definitely have come across few people who started their life with a very system of the sannyasa, renunciation. At least I have met with two people who actually renounced or become monk when they're like 4 or 5 year old. And then nobody forced them. So in that age, of course, we cannot say they escaped. Like, say if I say I'm renouncing, then probably some of you will say, well, why is Jnandev doing it? Has he enough to do the work in the forest, or has he had enough of teaching, or that, you know what I mean? But for a 4 or 5 year old child, we don't have these questions. So yes, there are stories where somebody renounced at that phase. Some people start their economic life way earlier than others. Some people start their pleasure life way earlier than others. So it can intensify, and change this system. Like some kids, even the kids I've known, they behave like totally adults, grown up. So almost like if they are living the Vanaprastha while they are only, 5, 10, 12 years old. So yes, we can be born in a typical phase and we can start our life from that phase. But this Chatur Ashram system says that this lesson actually not only for the individual, this lesson is also for everybody else. So as a parent, it is my duty to provide the Brahmacharya space for my children, and my duty to provide the Vanaprastha and the Sanyasa space for other people in part of my life. Yeah. So I hope that answers it correctly. Incorrect. Yes, Rob, please go for it.
Is the reason because they've renounced young is because they've let go of the cycles of having to experience these other 3 or 4 together?
Yeah, we don't, to me, if you come to the Vanaprastha or the Sannyasa naturally, then there is nothing, the other 2 are not important. So you remember, if we come to the moksha, then nothing else matters.
You don't need to experience, yeah.
We don't need to. And yeah, and that can happen at any point of our life. And yeah, so then once you get to the absolute bliss or the state of self-realization, Sat Chit Ananda, then there is nothing to experience. Yeah. And yeah, many souls do that. Many souls are born to accomplish that chapter or that part of the life. And this is how even like you can think of even yourself, well, there is billions of people on the planet Earth, but not everyone even think about their evolution. Not everyone think about the wellness. Not everyone thinks about. So even that itself is a good sign of that speeding of our evolution. Yeah, so thank you for that. Anyone else got any other questions or anything need to be added or said? No, all good? Okay, so I think then let's come to just look at it in a more of the what we call the dynamic perspective, and to sort of go back into realigning it with also our wholesome potential, what we call the dharma or the true evolution. Now, in dharma, when we think of what is my dharma, to me, our very first dharma is to live. So we're not killing ourselves by any means. And I don't mean like taking poison, or I'm not talking about the suicide here. I'm talking about eating unhealthy or not doing the right exercises, or not keeping yourself well, keeping yourself healthy. So supporting your life system. Then the second aspect is to accomplish or to live your true potential, so your skills. And in this way, we each one of us are born with a quality. Now, unlike the modern concept where we look at, oh, you're not good in this, you're not good in that, you cannot do maths, you cannot do physics, the Sanatan system says, look into what you are potentially capable to do. So if you know that you are a good carpenter, then the Sanatan wisdom will say, invest your time, your energy in carpentry and not in learning physics. So, self-analyzing or taking the help with others, and then educating or working on your own potentials. The third in that way is to change our life into an opportunity. Remember the dharma, the karma is I do. Dharma is that is done by you, or you are the instrument of it. You become effortlessly. And then in both of them, Krishna says that there are only two perspectives people live. Okay. So the one perspective is me, poor thing, the victim, the problem-oriented perspective. And the second perspective is, what can I do? So are we problem-oriented or are we solution-oriented? And you can see that the Purusarthas and the ashram system is looking at the solution or resolution. Am I looking at myself as a victim, or am I looking at myself as a warrior? So the problem and the opportunity, if you think of the word problem and the opportunity, what's the difference? It's just the attitude, isn't it? Or the perspective. In the one, you're looking at it, wow, I got this challenge, and how do I deal with it? And what can I do about it to make the positive change? And in other one, we give up and we complain, whinge, moan about the situation or whatever the problem is. So this problem-oriented attitude need to be transformed into solution-oriented. And in the solution-oriented, in the Chatur Ashram system, I believe that we are looking into what am I to give instead of what am I to get. What am I to get? What am I to get? It's a little bit of how many of us like to be a king or a queen? And in this Sanatana Dharma of the Chatur Purusarthas, all you need to do is learn to give, learn to offer, like what can I do? And when I say give, I don't mean that you have to give money or something. You give what is in your authority. It can be a wisdom, it can be a compliment, it can be a smile, it can be a hug to somebody, it can be sit down and listen somebody's story, whatever you can provide. So from the problem into the solution, from the victim into the opportunity, from taking from the beggar into the king's perspective. And when you think of the Chatur Ashrams and the Chatur Purusarthas, we wish to develop that wholesome attitude or the wholesome perspective. And the great thing, Krishna says, when you're going to offer that way, all the abundance will follow you. So you don't need to follow the material, you don't need to follow all the desires. The material, the wealth, and the prosperity will follow us. So my wish for all of us is to make that space integrate our everyday life, okay? Do something, make some time to learn, to work on your skills, work on your education, make a little time to find joy, pleasure, accomplishment in your life, and then a little time to share your experience, your wisdom, educate and support other people, and also make a little space every day to do some introspective sadhana towards self-realization. That can be your meditation, your pranayam, your contemplation, your mantra chanting. And in that way, you have all aspects. And I also personally feel if you live that way, then you just have to wait and see where your life takes you. You might find yourself renounced, you might find yourself accomplished in something very special. So treat yourself as that very special being. Make the 4 ashrams in your heart and in your time, your daily schedule. And it can be like few minutes. I don't think it need to be. Of course, if you can create a 48-minute cycle for each things, that's great. But if you cannot create that, even a couple of minutes on our Sanyasa, a couple of minutes on the Vanaprastha, a couple of minutes on the Grahatha, and a couple of minutes on the Brahmachariya, and your life will become meaningful. I think that's enough. Unless anyone else got something still feel need to say it or say something, please. You can have a few minutes. Yes, Rob.
I was just wondering, say, if so, the 4 stages are they the same for a different? So, say if someone lived for a lot longer, for 1,000 years or something, would it be still equal, or do different, say, species have different ratios of, if you know what I mean?
Well,
Was it
I
just
guess like,
humans?
yeah, well, with the other species, I would say, Rob, their evolution is so much faster. Okay, now don't take it personally, but the human kids are the only one takes so long to walk and find their own food. Okay. Whole other lives, it takes them few weeks to few months. Some animals, it takes them only half of the day and they on their feet to find their food.
So that it's a different ratio for.
Yeah, this cycle we're talking about the human life. Okay, with other animals, they are fast. They are faster than us.
But
I don't
and
want to say better, okay, because
no,
that's a bit going into the victim, but they're fast.
And then, like you talk, I know you'll probably get onto this at some point. The different yugas.
Yeah, we'll come to that. Yeah, we will go to that. Probably will be the not the next one, but the one after. So the next one we'll be looking at the karma and dharma.
So say if we live 1,000 years, this ratio would be 270, or
Yeah, it will change. Yes, of course.
okay,
Yeah. For the human life, then the cycle will change.
more. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it will change. So in that, to me, this is what I'm saying, Rob, is in the time and space we are living in, I
Yes.
would rather live all 4 parallelly instead of separating them. Because I don't know, like how many of us, you don't have to answer, but how many of us are like ready to renounce our pleasure life when we are 54? Look, Deepa is going to say, I am ready, and I thought you're going to unmute and say that. You know what I mean? So it's not really not that life anymore, is it? And also the 27 years. So, and we are still learning. So I personally would say, Rob, instead of like looking at it in the time phase that used to exist in the ancient time, and that time evolution, wow, I know some of you who've been in the teacher training course probably would have heard this example. When I went to school myself, it was a co-education, so the boys and girls, and the upper primary school. So that's the 8 years from the year 1 to year 8. Honestly, so the 3 days of the week, we all have the black, the khaki. Is it the brown or the khaki? What's the color in English? So anyway, it doesn't matter. So the khaki and then the white shirt, the blue shirt. So everyone in the school will have the khaki trousers and the blue shirt, the boys and girls. You would not know who is boy and who is girl unless you're looking at the long or the short hair. Now, when I was going to drop and pick my kids to school, and now I'm talking like, year 5, 6, 7. So even the puberty is changed so much more compared to what used to be in our parents' time. So instead of looking at them in the 0 to 27, Rob, I would say, look at them as the 4 dynamic aspects of our life. And can I make space? And I quite like, I think that also probably he uses this as an example. And he said, think of this as the 4 parts of your house. So you got the kitchen, you got your living room, you got your temple, and you got your bedroom. So of course you can sleep in the kitchen. I'm not saying that we can't. So as some of you are asking, can somebody be renounced? So yes, we can live in the kitchen, but think of the 4 ashrams as the 4 part of the dwelling, the place you live in, and you want to accomplish or enjoy each part of it. If you are on the path of renouncing, then all 3 or 3 doesn't matter. Then the Brahmacharya is enough to live. You learn, you do your sadhana, and you evolve, And that can happen at any point of your life. That for that, age has nothing to do with it. I hope I have answered that. And nobody said anything about what I asked, and that's fine. Okay, anyone else got anything to add? Otherwise, I think that's enough for today. Cool. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu sarve janaha sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Let's keep going and keep enjoying our sadhana. Namaste, everyone. Thank you for tuning in.